Now, to start, Jordan, what was it about this movie that made you want to sign on to it?
Oh man, what wasn't it about this movie? That doesn't make any sense. But genuinely, I'd never read anything quite like it before. I'm a cinephile, much like Addison, and I've been a really big fan of a Japanese cinema since I was a high schooler working in Blockbuster, which was a real job that I had, and Blockbuster was a real place for those of you born after 1995. And I think it was so obvious to me that Addison had this impressive visual lexicon just based on the references in the movie on the actual script page. And he'd also worked with my husband on a film called Hypochondriac. And I'd seen that movie and I thought it was really great. And I thought Addison was just a really promising filmmaker. And then I read the script and I didn't have a ton of time to deliberate because I was last in on the casting process and they were going to camera in 2 weeks. So I had to just sort of react on instinct. And I thought between what I know of Addison's capabilities, and how absolutely unique and original this movie was, I couldn't say no. That would have been crazy. If even just for the story afterward of what it was like to make this movie. And there are some really good stories, but I just never read anything like it before.
And that same question to you, Olivia, kind of what was the thing that pulled you to jump aboard?
Um, yeah, I got involved in this project. One of the producers, David Lawson, is a friend of mine. We've done a couple of other projects together, and he called me up one day and was like, "Hey, I have this project. It shoots in a month. It's really fucking weird. I know you're into weird stuff. Would you be down to read it? It has alien sex." It was a very quick pitch. I was like, 2 seconds to talk on the phone, and I was like, "Yeah, hell yeah, send it to me." So I read it that day, and I will say the thing that I realized got me was I was laughing the whole time I was reading the script. Like, it's really hard. I mean, Jordan, I feel like you could attest to this. It's really hard to laugh out loud while reading it
Exceptionally.
because, it takes a lot for things to be funny, to come together, performance, everything like that, editing. But this on the page, I was laughing like constantly throughout the whole thing. And my husband walked in, he's like, "What are you laughing at?" And I was like, "Oh no, I think I have to do this movie. I think this might be genius." Addison loves hearing that. But I just found it to be a very unique voice. I think Addison is such an amazing writer and he writes such good characters and dialogue. Like when I read that opening monologue, I mean, it scared the shit out of me. And I was like, I don't know how I'm going to do this. I mean, I'm very dyslexic. And so memorizing is so hard. So doing an 8-minute monologue sounded impossible, but that's also a reason to do it. So I feel like yeah, I don't know. I just feel like I really wanted to work with whoever wrote this script. And I met with Addison the same day. We talked for like 2 hours about both having OCD and a lot of mental illness stuff before we even started talking about the movie. So I really felt like I was in good hands with somebody who really understood the material because that was really important to me because it's such a uh, interesting movie that deals with so many deep things, but also is so zany and weird and wild that I wanted to make sure the person at the helm of it really understood the depths of it and was going to be responsible with that. And that was why I signed on, is because I knew Addison really got what he had written.
Mhm.
Oh, yeah. Kind of what you were touching on. So this film quickly shifts from comedy to really intense moments sometimes, but specifically for Joey's character, we see that a lot. Acting wise, how do you approach those quick changes?
Oh, mhm. I mean, I think Jordan and I, we both come from a school of television. Like we've both been in the TV machine for a lot of our careers. I mean,
And
we've done a lot
sci-fi in
of
particular.
what?
Sci-fi in particular, which I
Yeah,
feel like
sci-fi in
often
particular.
occupies that comedic, dramatic horror, body horror
Totally.
space.
Yeah, and in television, you have to be trained as to go quick because if you don't say your lines and perform quick, you're getting cut in the edit. So, you get really sharp working in television, and especially in genre. And so, yeah, for me, it's just really fun. I like doing that stuff. I don't really have a problem bouncing in and out of emotions or what's happening. I have a really huge imagination. So, working in sci-fi and horror is super fun for me.
Oh, yeah. So
I
both
also have ADD, so like I don't, you never know what I'm doing minute to minute, so it works out.
Yeah. For both of you. So Craig and Joey have this very instant, relatable friendship, all these funny moments that's just you look at them and you're like, that's, me and my friend. How did you two work out what their relationship would look like on screen?
Oh, it was intuit. It was intuition entirely. It just happened. When Liv and I met each other, we had a Zoom with Addison I think after I'd come on board, we did a Zoom, but I don't
Hmm.
know why. Was it just to meet each
Just
other?
for us to meet. Yeah, because I was on another movie, you were on the East Coast, and we did like a
That's
quick
right.
meeting and we fell in love immediately.
Because I thought my first thought was like, oh my God, she's so cool. And I wonder how long it's going to be before she discovers that I'm not cool and that actually, like, I watch British Bake Off and clean my house compulsively. Like, I'm not a
I do
cool
that too,
person.
though.
Well, this is what I learned. I was like, oh, like she's cool, but also she is me and I'm her.
Yeah.
And this was like it was a perfect match. I do really well. One thing that I will say I do exceptionally well, not that I do it exceptionally well, but I do exceptionally well when I'm tasked with creating strong relationships with women. I grew up with two older sisters. I feel like I've played the younger brother in almost everything that I've done. Or, in The Lake, I'm playing the father to this young woman. And in this film, like we have a very codependent relationship that's like siblings, but also um, best friends that maybe shouldn't be best friends. And I find my access point as an actor when I'm trying to get into a project, especially if I don't necessarily have a handle on the character, which I really didn't in this one. I had 2 weeks to prep, and I knew I was playing Addison's shadow avatar, but Craig is not me at all. And people like Craig exist, and I wanted to make sure I honored that. But I was very spun around in the process, especially in the first couple of weeks. Like I didn't know if what I was doing was working. I didn't know if I had the character or not, but I always knew that I had Liv. I knew that I had that access point to the relationship, and knowing I had that in was always at least something I could lean on when I didn't really know what to do with this person.
Mhm.
We got really lucky. I mean, in indie filmmaking, you don't have a lot of time to prep and to rehearse. And I came on a month before, but I was shooting a movie right up until we shot this, so I couldn't really meet any of the cast members till a couple of days before. So we only met once, Jordan and I in person, just to do a read through, and then day one, a couple of days later. But we got really lucky because the first week of shooting was all of the stuff between Joey and Craig, like at the house, like the opening of the movie. So we really got to like set the tone for our friendship and relationship in the movie before we got into the crazy stuff with
Right.
Brian. And I think that if the schedule was any other way, it would have been really difficult. I think we got so lucky and they really, took that into consideration.
That's so true. I never really thought about that, but that's really smart. I didn't consider the fact that, yeah, we had that.
Location and scheduling. It wasn't just for us. We just loved it.
No,
But
I
it
would
was
have
like
you guys
getting
were
to
friends
go
for
to
years.
No,
a,
Yeah.
that
No.
that was
been
like
it's
day one.
Natural.
it will be 4 years. She's never gonna get rid of me now.
No, you're too far away all the time already. I miss
I
you.
will. There will be annual trips to Los Angeles just so that we can go eat lunch.
Yeah. So kind of in the realm of their friendship, there are points where there seems to be jealousy bubbling between them. Do you think that is solely over Brian or over like the thought of losing each other too?
Good
Good
question.
question.
I think it's so complicated. You know, I was trying to figure that out while we were shooting it, and I think it's mostly over Brian, but I also think it's just like they don't know who they are as people. I feel like these are two very lost souls. So like everything feels like the ground is shaking beneath them. They just don't know. They're just grasping onto anything. So I think they're very jealous of each other because they don't know. I don't know. I always felt like I was jealous of you because I was like, well, maybe you have your shit together more than I do. You have money, you have this. I don't know. Like, I feel like Joey was always like, I think she is jealous of you. And
I
not
think Joey
because
was,
of
and also
Brian.
keeping the secret of what actually happened to her. So every time Craig leans on his trauma as an excuse for why he has severe failure to launch syndrome and can't adult enough that he can even make a phone call, I think that naturally that would just build resentment in Joey because she's sat there thinking like you think that you have been wronged by the world. You think there's some debt that needs to be paid back to you. You have no idea. You've no idea the debt that I've like that's owed to me. But obviously, Craig doesn't know that because Joey's kept it a secret. So I think this quiet resentment has been building for a very, very, very long time. And yeah, I think they're jealous of each other. Craig hates himself. So I think that Joey, despite the fact that, she's just as disorganized and maybe not anywhere, she's just as much of a sort of arrested adolescent as Craig is. She's pretty and she's attractive and she looks shiny to him. And he's so busy hating himself that he doesn't realize she does too.
I like that answer.
That
Worth
is a good answer.
it. So, Olivia, the way this film ends, it kind of leaves room for a possible sequel. I talked to Addison a little bit about it, and he said if it's loved enough, it's something he would consider. But is that something you hope happens, or what would you want a sequel to look like?
Yeah, I mean, we joked about it. I mean, you always do this when you're making a movie and you're having a great time and it feels good. You're like, God, I hope we get to make another one. I think this movie is set up perfect for a sequel. I mean, that's kind of how, when we were in the edit, we wanted to make it kind of feel like it could continue if it does well. But even if it doesn't, I really love that ending. I would love to do a sequel. I think it could be like more of like a Buffy the Vampire Slayer, like she goes out and tries to kill all the Bryans and the only problem is we have to find a way to bring Jordan back. Craig has to
I'm
come back.
dead.
It doesn't matter. We have to bring him
Something.
back. But no, first I would want to do a sequel.
Yeah. So, Jordan, for you, at some point in this movie, you get to do like the iconic horror movie stab. What was filming that like?
My dream come true. Everything was my dream come true, to be perfectly honest. Because the movies that I was raised, the kind of genre films I was raised on weren't particularly VFX heavy. It was a lot of practical effects, and I'd never had the opportunity to do anything like that. I've done so much genre, but so much of that has been in the VFX space, which is very fun, and it's such an exercise in imagination and play, and I really love that. But I'd never had the opportunity to be sat in a pool of cold, wet blood for 12 hours, or stab a styrofoam head over and over again and try to get the blood splatter right on my face. But honestly, outside of just the sort of excitement or the thrill of doing those effects and getting the opportunity to do something more practical, I had this really lovely moment where one day I was laying on the ground. I was in a pool of blood and I had a roll of paper towels under my head because I was on a concrete floor and I was stuck there. And there were all these adults gathered round, and Liv was there, and the VFX department was there, and Addison was there, and they're all having this very well-reasoned, very serious conversation about like the placement of this like worm thing that kind of looked like a sex toy. And I just thought like I had this moment where I was like, this is the coolest. I have the coolest job. This is the coolest thing. This is all I've ever wanted is to be in a sort of family of adult weirdos who are all just as concerned with how specific and interest like how the sort of specificity of all this weird stuff that we're doing that in any other job would be totally insane. But in this context, talking about the placement of the dildo worm and the way that the blood splatters across the camera and I just sort of had this really cool appreciative moment where I was like, man, I'm really with my people. That was sort of that was what it all meant to me. Outside of just the fun of doing the practical effects, I think it was this very cool moment where I was like, oh, I think I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be.
You did great. I've been doing horror my whole life. I've been in blood since forever, 20 years. But I just remember the moment you realized how cold the blood
Oh,
is. Like
it's
fake blood
uncomfortable.
is like ice. And when you have to be in it all day, it's miserable. And I just remember looking at you and I'm like, are you cold? And you're like, I'm freezing. What is it? And I'm like, it's gonna be a long day.
And sticky. It's so
Very
sticky. And like I'm a very clean person. Liv knows. Like I'm a very clean person. So to have like I went home and there just weren't enough nail brushes in the world. Like I just couldn't scrub long enough.
You were so out of your element at the same time, so in your element.
It's very confusing. I'm a real contradiction as a human. Like it's a really weird.
Oh, yeah. Olivia, so as funny and wacky as this movie is, there's a lot of heart to it and delving into trauma. What do you hope lingers with festival goers who will be watching the film?
I hope it's the same thing that I think we all felt while filming it. Like, I felt very lucky to be working on a project that was dealing with such topics of mental health and, sexual assault and trauma and all that kind of stuff. It's really rare you get to do that and feel really like I felt like we really left nothing on the table. We went there with all of the characters and it was very cathartic for me because Joey and I are very similar and I never get to play characters that are so close to home for me. And we got to do it in this vehicle of, sci-fi horror comedy, whatever you want to call it, which is the beauty of working in genre is it gets to be whatever you want it to look like, but you get to sneak in the message and what you're really telling a story about. And I think that's what Addison's writing does so well. And so I hope people leave this film feeling like they were really entertained, really funny, very horny, and also maybe thinking about the experiences they've all had in their lives and the trauma they've had and that they have overcome and survived. And like, I don't know, it made me feel good about myself and all the things that I've overcome and continue to overcome with different traumas in my life. And I'm like, yeah, but life, it can still be fun and silly. And I don't know. I just hope people have a good time.
I sure did watching it.
I
I
feel
was
horny. I don't know
totally.
why. Addison loves to say that. And I'm like, yeah, that's, I guess, a good thing
Well,
to
I
about.
like it because it's like you kind of do want people to be sad and be horny and have fun because it's the weirdest thing in life. Tragedy strikes and you're totally bereft and also you're laughing and then like, you know, people it's like kind of a common thing like people have sex in the throes of really devastating things that happen to them. Like I think life is so three-dimensional and it's a full 360 degrees at all times. And that's what I found so intriguing about this movie and what I felt it did so successfully, which is really hard to pull off because the line between, abject chaos on screen and a full 360 degrees, it's quite fine. Um, and similar, I just finished watching Anora, which I just adored and I think is such an incredible movie. That movie is devastating and funny and sexy. It's erotic, it's crazy, it's depressing, it, you know, so thoughtful and incisive. It's all the things. I think that it's a tough nut to crack in cinema if you're going to attempt to do the full turn, but if you can pull it off, it's really powerful.
Oh, yeah. And kind of just as a final question for both of you, what does it mean for you for this film to be shown at South by Southwest? And just the experience of the festival circuit.
Liv,
I
you've
mean,
done stuff
no,
before.
I've actually never done South by. I've done Sundance, but I've never done South by. So I'm really excited. I've always wanted to go to this festival. I can't believe it's such an honor that we're going to these big festivals with this movie. I mean, that's just like such a testament to the movie that both festivals want us. And so I'm just really excited for audiences to see it. I think that the South by audience is really going to dig it. I think they're going to really eat it up. I'm hoping. But yeah, no, I just feel really lucky that we get to go to that festival.
I thought you were going to make a Brian pun when you said eat it up.
Look, oh no, I see. I always leave these interviews with jokes that I didn't do, and
Oh
it,
yeah, of course.
but I have to watch myself. Yeah.
I mean similarly like I've been to I had a film at South by years ago and I couldn't go because I was working on Orphan Black and it just didn't work out with scheduling and then uh my husband had a film, one of the first films he wrote that premiered at South by in 2019. So that was my first experience with the festival and I loved Austin. I loved the enthusiasm for film. I especially love the enthusiasm at South by for genre film. I love horror movies. I think that they're so hard to do and they're so hard to pull off. And when you do, it's honestly some of the most prestigious filmmaking. I think it's like tops if you can make a really good horror movie because it requires every key on the piano, like really every tool on the belt. It requires everything. and it requires everybody to be on board at 150%. And we don't have to debate the mathematics of that, but like I think it's so impressive to me. And this is a festival that celebrates and has celebrated genre since its inception. And I'm really grateful for that because some of the best horror movies that have, honestly, of the last like 10 to 15 years have found their home at South by, and that's where they got their start. So I'm really excited that we get to be a part of that.